The Vikings believed the world would not last forever. To them, the future held a terrifying fate known as Ragnarök, a time when even the gods themselves would fall. But what exactly did these seafaring warriors imagine about the end of all things? Was it an inevitable cycle, a prophecy with hidden meaning, or a warning tied to the struggles of their daily lives? And why did a people so skilled in exploration and survival invest so much thought into their own destruction? To understand their vision of the world's end, it is important to know how the Vikings viewed existence itself. They lived between the late 8th and 11th centuries AD, at a time when Scandinavia was shaped by harsh climates, unpredictable seas, and constant conflict. Survival depended on courage, strength, and the belief in supernatural forces that could guide or doom them. Their religion, now known as Norse mythology, was not based on a single sacred book, but on oral tradition, poems and sagas passed down over centuries. Central to this belief system were gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya, who embodied wisdom, strength, and fertility. But even these divine figures were seen as vulnerable to fate. One of the most striking aspects of Norse belief was the concept of fate, or word. In their stories, fate bound both humans and gods alike, and not even Odin, the chief of the gods, could escape its pull. The Norns, three powerful beings, were said to weave the destinies of all creatures at the roots of the great world tree, Yggdrasil. This sense of unavoidable destiny shaped Viking ideas about the world's end. While other ancient cultures often looked forward to eternal renewal, the Vikings envisioned a final destruction that was certain to come. The Vikings described several warnings that would signal the approach of the world's destruction. According to the Old Norse poems, the first signs would include bitter winters known as Fimbulwinter. This was not a single cold season, but 3 consecutive winters without summer in between. Crops would fail, chaos would erupt, and humanity would turn against itself. Wolves, long seen as sinister and supernatural creatures, would grow more powerful. The monstrous wolf Fenrir, chained by the gods because of his strength, would finally break free. At the same time, Jörmungandr, the enormous sea serpent, would stir in the ocean, causing storms and floods. These omens reflected not just mythic imagination, but also the real dangers that the Norse faced in their environment, where harsh winters and violent seas could mean ruin. According to Norse myth, the culmination of all these signs was a final battle between the gods and their enemies. The gods would march to face their opponents on the plain of Vigrid, a battlefield described as vast and featureless. Here, Odin would confront Fenrir, Thor would battle the serpent Jörmungandr, and other gods and monsters would meet in combat. The result was foretold with grim certainty. Odin would be swallowed by Fenrir. Thor would slay Jörmungandr but collapse dead from the serpent's venom. Fire and chaos would spread as the fire giant Surtur burned the world, engulfing both gods and men. Unlike other mythologies where the divine emerges triumphant, the Vikings envisioned their gods dying side by side with mortals, consumed by the same devastation. At the heart of Norse cosmology stood Yggdrasil, the ash tree that connected the 9 realms of existence. The end of the world did not only mean battles on Earth, but also the collapse of the entire cosmic order. Serpents would gnaw at the tree's roots, and it would shudder as creation unraveled. The 9 realms, home to gods, mortals, giants, and the dead, would fall into ruin. For the Vikings, this symbolized a truth they accepted. Nothing, not even the universe itself, was beyond the reach of destruction. Odin, chief of the gods, played a central role in preparing for Ragnarök. Legends told that he sacrificed an eye in exchange for wisdom, and hanged himself on Yggdrasil to gain knowledge of magical runes. Despite all his knowledge and sacrifices, Even Odin could not prevent the prophecy of the world's end. His story reflected the Viking idea that wisdom, courage, and preparation were not enough to escape fate, but were still essential values to uphold in the face of it. Odin led his people, both gods and mortal warriors, not by promising salvation, but by embodying courage in inevitable defeat. The myths surrounding Ragnarok also gave meaning to how Vikings viewed their own deaths. Warriors who fell bravely in battle were believed to be chosen by the Valkyries and taken to Valhalla, Odin's great hall, where they would train and feast until they were called upon in the final battle. Other souls would go to different realms, such as Folkvangr, ruled by the goddess Freya. For the Vikings, bravery in life ensured a role in the struggle at the world's end. This made the idea of dying courageously far preferable to dying without honor, shaping their values both in raiding and in daily life. As bleak as Ragnarok sounded, the story did not end with destruction alone. After the fire of Surtur burned the world, some figures were predicted to survive. Two human beings, Leif and Lifthrasir, meaning life and eager for life, would emerge from hiding to repopulate the earth. Certain gods, like Odin's sons Vidar and Vali, and Thor's sons Modi and Magni, would also live through the chaos, inheriting the legacy of their fallen fathers. The sun, after being swallowed, would have a daughter who would rise to shine on the new world. This cycle of rebirth suggested that even though destruction was unavoidable, life itself would ultimately continue. Today, historians see in Ragnarök both mythology and reflection of the Vikings' lived experiences. The cold, harsh climate of Scandinavia, with long winters and devastating storms, gave shape to apocalyptic visions of endless frost and cosmic upheaval. The uncertainty of survival in battle may have inspired myths in which even gods could die abruptly, no matter their power. Ragnarök encapsulated the Norse belief in an inescapable fate, and yet also held a promise that even after unspeakable destruction, a form of renewal was always possible. The idea of Ragnarök did not vanish with the Viking Age. These myths were written down in medieval Iceland centuries after the first oral traditions, ensuring their survival. Today, Ragnarök continues to influence literature, art, film, and even modern interpretations of ancient mythology. It remains a compelling vision of an end times that is brutal yet meaningful, where struggle and courage matter as much as survival. The story reflects the Vikings' resilience, their acceptance of fate, and their belief that even in destruction, the seeds of new life could endure. The Vikings believed that the world would end in fire, floods, and unrelenting battle. Yet their vision of Ragnarök was not just about annihilation, it was a reflection of the values they held most dear. Courage, honor, and acceptance of fate stood at the center of their worldview. Though their gods would perish and their world would collapse, life itself would continue in some form. In this way, the prophecy of Ragnarök remains one of the most haunting and thought-provoking legacies of the Viking Age. A reminder that even destruction was not the end, but part of a larger cycle of existence.